Welcome to the Institute of Jewish Knowledge and Learning. We are exploring Sparks of Awe with Rabbi Akiva Mann. Take it away, Rebbe.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Good morning, everyone. Happy Labor Day.
Good morning. Happy Labor Day to you.
Okay, friends, for those that were with us last week, which is probably most of you, we were talking about the episode in the Torah that deals with Jacob, and you know, there's a huge gap. You know, we call the upcoming holy days the Yamim Noraim, the days of awe. And the Hebrew word, all of you know, the Hebrew word for awe is norah. Yamim noraim. Norah means like the vernacular today, like awesome. In Old English, as most of you know, the word norah or yira, which comes from the same root word, is sometimes translated, usually translated in older versions of English, if not in most, as yira is translated as fear, and because some of our sensibilities over the years, we have established that we don't like that word fear, so we use the word awe. But there is a very strong connection between the word awe and fear that we're not going to discuss today. But I think the episode that we spoke about last week, and that we're going to sort of continue in a different vein this week, Jacob finds himself in a situation that is a perfect combination between the sentiment, the feeling, the experience of awe and fear at the same time. Sometimes there is something so awesome that occurs that it induces fear. And we have to spend some time, not this week, but we have to spend some time on those two words, which pertain to two different emotions, but coming basically from the same root, coming from the same core. I just want to, you know, plant that seed. Jacob, on his way back from 22 years away from home, and the scenarios is he is meeting his twin brother Esav, who he betrayed 22 years beforehand, and is meeting him and has absolutely no idea how Esav is going to greet him, except he knows that Esav is greeting him. He hears a report that Esav is greeting him, accompanied by 400 of his supporters, of his men. So he really does not know whether this is going to be a positive or negative experience. Really is fearing for his life, fearing for his family's life. He is encamped a few miles away from where Esav is. He splits up his camp. He is in such fear that he splits up his family and camp. Hate to say it, but a little reminiscent of World War II and the Holocaust, where families had to, where parents were forced to split their families in half and take a gamble of which one is going to survive. Yaakov does that, and the entire story is, if we take it from an overhead position, it is a story of how to survive crisis. To bring it back home on a personal level, which we ought to be doing with every episode in the Torah, revolving around our biblical personalities and characters. We have to bring it back into ourselves. This story is certainly a story teaching us something about surviving our own personal crises. It's teaching us something about when we feel alone and we feel afraid and we are in distress. And please come up with an imagery in your own minds of a time in the past and or in the present when you knew and you felt you were in some sort of crushing situation where you felt abandoned, you felt alone, and you were in fear of ... You were in a state of fear, whether it had to do with an illness of your own or of a loved one, or God forbid a death, or even a general malaise. You look at yourself and you feel that you are drained. Your life is drained of meaning, or drained of vigor. Or maybe one is experiencing a touch, or a little bit more of a touch of depression. So certainly this episode in Jacob's life is one of those episodes, except it is heightened. It is it's not a slight distress. It is a distress and a possible life-changing distress. And friends, sometimes, as much as we go deeply into episodes and verses of the Torah, I have to say that sometimes to take a look without any fancy midrashim, without any interpretations and explanations that are, sometimes a touch far-fetched and colorful. Sometimes it's very worthwhile to take a look at the Torah and view it like we're going to be viewing it on a very personal level, and on a surface level, without deep interpretation, on a surface level, on a very pshat level, and in terms of discovering from the verses and from the narrative the real humanity behind the story, without any fancy, without any colorful, without going too deep. There are times when the plain pshat is the way to view the narrative, because we have to see some of the biblical characters and some of the biblical heroes. We have to see and extract the humanity of our biblical characters, in contradistinction to many other religions and traditions. Our biblical characters and heroes are extremely human, and we have to connect in a very empathetic way with their humanity, with their failures, with their distresses, with their fears and their doubts. And from that vantage point, we can really connect and discover what the Torah at the end of the narrative is actually trying to tell us. Okay. The Talmud has a consummate expression that really encapsulates what I just said. Ma'aseh avot siman libanim. The episodes of the avot and imahot, the episodes that the Torah narrates for us of the patriarchs and matriarchs, siman libanim, are indicators for the banim, for their progeny, for their children. So that's telling us, the banim, the progeny of the patriarchs, that we are actually, through the narration of the Torah's of the episodes occurring in the patriarchs and matriarchs' lives, is a siman, is an indicator for us when we are going to go through similar events. Because the Torah only records those events that are really applicable and relevant to the banim. There are many things in Jacob's, Abraham's, Isaac's, Sarah's, Rebecca's life that the Torah does not record, correct? Not every, the Torah leaves out like so many decades of their lives without recording anything. The Torah only records what is really for posterity, for us to learn from. So the first thing that the Torah records in this episode, as he is in this stressful situation, is that Jacob, after he divides the camp up for their safety, he is left alone. He is left alone. And as he is left alone, he does come up. When you're alone, we probably do our best thinking when we are alone. And Jacob is thinking of this elaborate plan, and we'll shorten the elaborate plan to this. He is first, in contradistinction to what we spoke about last week, was the possibility of Jacob himself having to use violence to resolve this situation. And we spoke extensively about Jacob's inner hesitancy to use any form of violence, but if he had to, he would. But it was part of his dilemma. So Jacob is alone, and he is thinking. Number one priority is diplomacy, how he is going to not use violence, but rather use words to resolve this situation. He also, as he is alone, is thinking of presenting his brother with gifts. That was one of the ways that he thought he might be able to appease his brother's anger. And the other alternative, the other method that Jacob employs here is the Medrash tells us is prayer. Diplomacy, gifts or war, and prayer. Jacob tries to think, as all of us would, I guess, in any crisis situation. He tries to think of every and any type of strategy, any kind of, he's thinking of any kind of eventuality. And Chevra, he thinks he has it all straight. Diplomacy, gifts, war, prayer. I have all the ingredients that I could possibly have to get out of this situation unscathed. The funny thing is, friends, he thinks of everything except the one that actually happened. Except the one that actually happened. What happens after he has in his head everything planned out? Amazingly, as he is alone, the Torah narrates this one of the most dramatic, I believe, one of the most drama-filled stories in the entire Torah. What happens at this very moment is the appearance of this unknown, unidentified being that appears to him that would change Jacob's life forever. That's the sequence of what happens, and that is the ultimate climax of this particular story. As it turns out, it is the climax of the story is not going to be when he meets Esav and what happens when he encounters Esav. The actual drama and the purpose and meaning of the entire narrative is really something that comes to Jacob so unexpectedly, so out of left field. So the first lesson is that, actually. That's the first lesson in this narrative, that we all live, we are all living towards an unknown and unknowable future. And this is kind of like everything I'm going to say now has relevance to the high holy days. The first lesson is Jacob thinks he has everything planned, everything in place, all strategies are checked off. And what occurs is the most unexpected thing that Jacob could ever have foreseen, that we are going to talk about now. But there's a huge lesson in there. There's a huge lesson. We have absolutely no idea what the future in one instant holds for us. It's sort of reminiscent. It's reminiscent of the answer that the divine presence and the divine voice gives Moses when Moses asks in front of the burning bush, you're asking me to go to Pharaoh and to free my brothers and sisters from enslavement? Who shall I say you are? And the divine voice says, this is my name. This is by name, as we did in the Tuesday class. This is my name means this is my essence. My essence is reflected in my name. And my name, Moishelah, that you tell Pharaoh, is Ehya Asher Ehya. I will be what I will be. Until the moment comes, you will not know. And that's really our position in life. We do not know what is going to occur until until the next second. And the next second, we still don't know what the next second holds for us. Quite humbling, at the very least, quite humbling. Kind of puts us and our arrogance and our egos in a place. So Jacob finds himself thinking that he has everything. You know that, remember that old, the old Yiddish expression, a Mensch tracht und Gott lacht. Man can think of all of the strategies in the world. Und Gott lacht. And God and the divine destiny has made maybe a different plan. So Jacob finds himself in that situation. He's trachting and thinking and strategizing, and boom, an unknown, mysterious ish. The Torah calls this thing an ish, and I don't want to get into a midrashic thing of what was it, a man, was it an angel, was it God itself? We don't want to go there. We want to stick with what's happening internally to Jacob, and Jacob finds himself, as the Torah narrates, in a wrestling match with this ish. And what does that really mean? What does that really mean? That he wrestled with this ish. On the pshat level, which Maimonides likes to do, in contradistinction to many other commentaries that interpret this episode very differently. The wrestling match was an externalization with Jacob's inner self. That the way the Torah describes it needs a little interpretation, a little, very, very much on a psycho-spiritual level, that this ish that Jacob is wrestling with is no other than Jacob himself. And the narration in the Torah is just an external way of describing this inner conflict that is running through Jacob's soul. The narration of the Torah in presenting this ish, this mysterious man that is wrestling with Jacob, is really a way of the Torah's way of saying that he is wrestling with himself, and that it is in Jacob's inner psycho-spiritual realm, in that world where the battle is really taking place. Maimonides describes it in, and then later on, this becomes a beautiful term for any kind of inner conflict that we ever go through, and it's a beautiful term called milchemet hayetzer. Milchemet, coming from the word milchama, which means a battle or a war. Milchemet hayetzer, and yetzer, you know, yetzer hatov, v'yetzer hara. Milchemet hayetzer is a beautiful term. It's really translated as a battle. A battle of the inclinations, a battle of the inner self. Who is familiar with Milchemet Hayetzer? Oh, I see. Surprisingly, I see some hands not up. I'd like to speak to them. I'd like to speak to those that are clear of any type of milchemet hayetzer. The upshot, friends, here is that the Torah is trying to teach us here, if we can win the battle that is, you can look at me, you might or might not, that I'm pointing to my heart. If we can win the battle that is in here, then we can win any battle that is out there. The narrative of the Torah with Jacob and this wrestling match is really telling us a story about, it's the story of our lives, of every man, every woman's life, that throughout life, be prepared for the milchemet hayetzer, being that we never know what is going to really be coming our way. And the longer we live, the more we will not know what's coming our way. This whole episode is trying to impart to us that we have to muster up the type of experience, the type of wisdom, the type of strength in the face of conflict that tears our insides apart through the milchemet hayetzer, through the battle of our insides, and that if we can't win the struggle within ourselves, we will eventually lose the struggle with the outside world, with the outside world. If Yaakov cannot, in this lonely night, if he cannot be victorious in his own world, in his own struggle, he will never, ever be able to go out into the world and conquer situations, Esav situations, adversarial situations, if he first does not take care of equalizing his own inner struggle. I saw a few hands up. I'll take a little break now.
Marcia has had her hand up for a good bit, followed by Shabri.
Hi. So what struck me from the beginning of this story is that Jacob is getting ready to meet with Esau, who he terribly wronged the last time they met. He deceived him and he got him kicked out to wander in the desert for, how many years. And they're meeting up and he thinks of war, he thinks of gifts, he thinks of prayer. The one thing that apparently, if I'm understanding this correctly, he doesn't think of teshuvah. He doesn't think of making amends or apologizing or asking for forgiveness. And from my recollection, even after he wrestles with the angel, his own demons, and does he, I don't think he ever gets to that point with Esau, does he? And what does that say?
Marcia, he does.
Does he?
He does. There is a huge reconciliation that takes place once he meets him. But your point is well taken. Even with that, look up the verses. Yes, there is a reconciliation, but your point is well taken, because this is possibly what you just said is the inner struggle and conflict and process of tshuva that actually Jacob is going through in this wrestling match. He is wrestling with himself and what he did, even though he was a good boy and listening to his mother the whole way through. But nevertheless, that evening, that night, that terrible, awesome night, is exactly the pangs, the pangs of tshuva, wondering what he did. Just one sec. I'm going through pangs myself. He is wondering about his whole life, his whole legitimacy. The 22 years that he did not spend in the wilderness, he spent building up actually an empire. He was spending the 22 years on entrepreneuring. And he is wondering about his whole legitimacy in life. This night is the night of tshuva. That night is kol nidre for him. And that's
he ask? You said there's
all about.
Okay, and we have Shabri and Mike Seltzer up next.
Oh, Rabbi, I was thinking that even though we can't make excuses for what we have gotten ourselves into, such as Jacob and personally, that in the long run, in order to make it, in order to have a mind and an ability to deal with it, we have to come to peace about it. We have to accept it in a way that allows us to think more peacefully, not to bring peace, but the peace that passes all understanding has to dwell inside, and this way we can be more humble, and we could come to a conclusion, and also come to tshuva. If you don't have peace, you're not going to come to tshuva.
Beautifully said, Shabri. Beautifully said.
Okay. We have Mike, and then Carolyn no longer has her hand up.
You might have stolen my whole lecture in that, Shabri. That's one of the main points coming out of it. Okay, go ahead.
Really?
Mike.
Oh, thank you. That was good. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Rabbi mentioned Jacob wrestled all night. I'm wondering, from a moment-to-moment battle that we have with our own internal struggles, how do we know when we've won and the struggle is over, at least for that moment?
Mike, can we hold on to that question until we go on with the story? Because we might see from the unfolding of the narrative the answer to that question, and if we don't, then ask me the question again.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So Carolyn had taken down her hand, and Sandy G unmuted herself. Do either of you wish to speak before Bruce? Then I guess not. Okay, Bruce, take it away.
Okay, I like what Shabri said. The one question that's been floating around quite a bit in my mind was not being able to predict the future, and or something may take place unexpectedly. I'm trying to narrow it down. We can plan, certainly, and God can do what he does, and it could conflict or delete what our aspiration or objective is, but that doesn't prevent us from planning.
Right.
If we walked around just saying, well, I don't have any control of my life, whatever happens, or no matter what I do, from a pessimistic point of view, it doesn't matter because God may intervene or something may take place. There seems to be, in my mind, some inconsistency.
Okay, Bruce, thank you for that. That's a point that probably needs to be clarified. That because we do not know the future, there's no way for us to be able to know the future. In no way does that mean that we do not and should not make plans. We have an obligation, a responsibility to make plans. However, we cannot be so arrogant as to convince ourselves that our plans, when they do not go as planned, is somehow a intervention, an insult to us. Friends, you know the word, Bruce, the word faith. The word faith, it's a huge word. But the word faith does not mean certainty. It does not mean that I am certain. In the real deep Jewish sense, you know what faith means? Faith means that I have the courage to live with uncertainty. It doesn't mean I don't make plans. It doesn't mean that I don't try my hardest. Faith means that I am able to live with uncertainty, and I have the courage to shift and do whatever comes my way. Faith means I have the courage to do that, and I don't fall apart when my plan and my certainty of plan somehow is not made manifest. And that's the position Jacob is in. I have all the strategies and everything, but things are not going my way, and I have to now muster up the inner courage to look within and exercise milchemet hayetzer. Who am I in this predicament? What am I going to become if this happens or that happens? In other words, the courage to look at the situation vis-a-vis my own self, and not the externalities of it. Okay.
We have Betsy Bloom up next.
Hi, I've had this question since you started, Rabbi, regarding an explanation of awe. Does it necessarily have to be fear as opposed to apprehension?
It can be and is both and even more than both of those. It requires the spectrum of awe and what is included in the sphere of awe and what is included in the sphere of fear. Fear being a lower leveled manifestation of awe, a more detailed and a more surface level, and awe meaning a higher, more transcendent level of fear. So it's really not for now, but it includes the entire spectrum.
Okay. I think you can move on.
Okay. So Jacob's struggle is all of our struggles. And sometimes there are situations that really bring us to that point in our lives, in heavy situations where our entire lives are really in the balance, really at stake, depending on the situation. Sometimes a little lesser, but the milchemet hayetzer, the struggle, the battle of where we go in certain situations, how we maintain ourselves, how we survive certain predicaments and situations in our lives, is being encapsulated by Jacob's struggle and Jacob's wrestling match. Wrestling with ourselves is a good and necessary thing. It reminds me of a great author, a great human being by the name of Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a survivor of Auschwitz. And there in the camps, he was a psychotherapist, and actually there in Auschwitz, he discovered his future vocation. There in the camps, Viktor Frankl saw individuals, human beings from all walks of life, who were ready to give up on life. And I'll tell you one thing that he mentions very, very overtly. When you had thoughts of giving up on life in Auschwitz, you know what happened? You died. You had no chance. Viktor Frankl saw some of these individuals, his bunkmates. And what he did was he approached his fellow inmates one by one, those that he saw were in deep distress. And he approached them one by one and asked them, do you have one dream, one unfulfilled dream that you can tell me about? Can you identify one vision of yours that you were hoping for all your life and that you want to have come true in your lifetime? It was through this type of approach, this type of therapy, that one by one, he ignited a candle of hope in those that had no hope left, and saved in Auschwitz itself hundreds of inmates that were ready to call it quits. Ultimately, when he survived, he instituted this type of therapy and named it a new type of therapy that was actually accepted nearly worldwide, called logotherapy. And logotherapy was explained and presented to the scientific world and to the lay world in a book that he wrote called Man's Search for Meaning. If anyone, I recommend that book highly, as a tremendous psycho-spiritual book that can help any one of us that is going through any sort of distress, any sort of situation in which one feels, that heavy weight of hopelessness. Pick up that book, Man's Search for Meaning, and also another book of his called The Doctor of the Soul. The Doctor of the Soul. What he does in those books is the same that Jacob was doing on that lonely night, wrestling his, so to speak, arch enemy. Jacob was trying to discover something that was calling him from the future and that would give him the faith and the strength to pull himself up from this terrorizing situation. Friends, there is a specific psalm that we recite in the month of Elul, and continues from the month of Elul till the end of Sukkot, actually. And it begins with Adonai Ori V'yishi. God, you are my light in the heart of my darkness. Adonai Ori, you are my light, V'yishi, and my salvation in my heart of darkness. That was Viktor Frankl's basis for his book and his logotherapy. Every single one of us needs to muster up to see a vision in our darkness that is going to be the source of our moving forward. We all need that. We need that little glimmer of light that little vision, that little unfulfilled dream, in order to propel us to move forward with courage out of our distress, out of our darkness. And that, my friends, is a summary of what Jacob was doing on that lonely night, to himself and with himself. Rashi's grandson, he was a great rabbi and a great commentator on the Torah. His name is, the acronym of his name was Rashbam. He has an extraordinary chiddush. He has an extraordinary insight to add to Jacob's story. And he says like this, and this is a message. This is a message clearly for us. He says that Jacob in his state of mind of fearing confrontation with his brother, the Rashbam says that Jacob wanted to run away. That night, one of his alternatives was actually, I am not going to engage with Esav. I'm not going to try war. I'm not going to try diplomacy. I'm not going to try gifts. I'm not going to try anything. I am going to make an exit stage left, and I'm going the other way. Why deal? Says Jacob in his heart of hearts. Why deal with the confrontation with Esav? And why deal on a deeper level? Why deal with my own? Why confront myself? Let me run away. Who else did that? Quick. Who else did that in our history, in our liturgy? Jonah and the whale. Jonah said, oh, I have the task in front of me. I have the challenge in front of me. I'm running away. I'm going the other way. I'm going to try to escape the inevitable. So the Rashbam says that Jacob wants to run away. And you know what happens? There might be an awesome lesson. What happens when we want to run away, friends, from our own selves?
Wherever we go, there we are. Maddie raised her hand also.
Whenever we want to run away,
Where's that in my mouth?
whenever we want to run away, God sends an angel. God sends an angel to wrestle with us, to prevent us from fooling ourselves. And God sends an angel to engage in a wrestling match. And God, through sending that angel, and it can come in the most mysterious ways, through the most mysterious people even. God teaches us how to wrestle with our fears and to defeat our fears.
Well, whenever we run away, we come close. That's when we come closest to ourselves.
Nice. So the lesson here is we've said it many a time when the Talmud asks, Eze hu gibor, who is strong, who is considered really strong and invincible? The answer is not those that are able to defeat their enemies, those that can exert power on others. That is not who our sages consider strong. Ezehu Gibor, who is really, really strong? Hakovesh et Yitzro. Again, that word Yetzer. Hakovesh et Yitzro, one who is able to master and conquer his or her impulses. If you are master over your impulses, if you are psycho-spiritually balanced and healthy, then that is strength. That is true strength. The Proverbs have a beautiful verse regarding this, and this really is so all-encompassing of our entire Yetzer, our entire personalities are at stake here. The Proverbs, a beautiful verse in Proverbs 16. He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty. He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty. Friends, Jacob's night of terror, he is asking himself, Yankala, are you really in control? Is it really, Yaakov is asking himself, is it really Esav that is the problem? Or are you, there is something internal in you that is causing the conflict and the confrontation? It is self-realization that Jacob is involved with here. Self-realization. Jacob is not sure who Jacob is. And has to do not reconciliation necessarily with Esav, but reconciliation with himself. In reality, friends, as it turns out, retrospectively, the honest truth is that Jacob really had nothing to worry about, as it turned out. Because as it turns out in reality, we later find out that actually there is no anger. Esav is not angry, and there is no battle. Esav kisses Jacob at the end. They embrace and they go their separate ways in peace. So as it turns out, Jacob had nothing to worry about. He was correct in worrying and confronting his own inner self. Everything that Jacob was actually afraid of failed to happen. And you know what, friends? I think it could be that it failed to happen because Jacob, on that awesome night, resolved his own inner conflicts within himself. He removed the source of tension between Esav and himself by self-realizing his own spirit. On a very psychological level, Chevra, you all know that predatory animals, when they can smell fear, correct? Predatory animals know whether you are afraid or not afraid. If they smell on you fear, then you are their ultimate victim. If they do not smell fear, they will usually go away because they can smell self-confidence and they can smell a lack of confidence. Maybe it was because Jacob went through this awesome night and discovered something awesome in his inner self. And Taka, like Marcia said, Taka did tshuva, did a tshuva, and had nothing after that to worry about, because as Shabri said before, he was at peace. He was at peace with himself. And when you're at peace with yourself, you can encounter nearly anything. You have the courage to go forward into any kind of scenario. And maybe that sort of self-confidence and self-realization of Yaakov turned things around, that when he actually confronted Esav, the potential predator, Esav just said, "Oh, hi there, Jake. How's it going?" Friends, Jacob's story is about acquiring an inner sense of equilibrium of our yitzarim, our yetzers, our inclinations, our impulses. When our impulses are in a place of tiferet, in a place of balance and beauty, there's not much that we can't conquer. It is when we are out of sync, when our equilibrium is not equalized, that is when we start wobbling and we leave ourselves open. We become weak, and we leave ourselves open to a whole slew of type of predators and conflict and challenges with ourselves, but mainly between ourselves and other people. When we find our Yetzer not balanced, you know what? You're nearly guaranteed that you're going to get into a fight with your husband or wife. Not that your spouse is doing anything wrong. It's you're out of sync. Because when you're in sync, you can handle nearly everything. I'm looking at the time.
Do you want, okay, so it's 1:18, so you have 12 minutes. Sandy and Betsy have hands up. Is Sandy's, it's still, it was a while. Is it still, do you still want to ask? I guess yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to say two things. It's very interesting. Viktor Frankl, in his inauguration speech, John F. Kennedy based his saying about his country on Viktor Frankl's saying, "Don't ask what you want from life. Ask what life wants from you."
Mm.
And the other thing is that I attend an all-day series of Jewish learning in Toronto called Limud. And last year, we actually had some very famous litigating lawyers do a trial. And the trial was that Esau was suing Jacob for parity. He wanted half the birthright. And guess who won? Esau.
Esau, yeah.
That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Nice. And Sandy, once I see your beautiful Canadian ponem, I think I am correct in saying that a really great Canadian rabbi, Rabbi Reuven Bulka of Ottawa, I do believe that he wrote a book or his PhD thesis on he was a huge student of logotherapy. And what are you putting up there?
I'm putting up Perkei Avot by
from Reuven Bulka. I do believe that he was a student of logotherapy and a huge fan of Viktor Frankl, and that's one of the many reasons why, if anyone is interested, it's a very readable book. It's a touch heavy, but anyone that wants to invest some time, it would be worthwhile to check out this great thinker.
Betsy is your last hand before
Thank you,
wrap up.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm not really getting all this, and I hope that you can help. Jacob spends this evening searching within himself to understand what might happen to him, and what and I understand the part that he's bringing his own fears or misgivings from himself. And I understand what Shabri said about you have to have peace. But how can Jacob have peace without first getting some kind of forgiveness from his brother?
Betsy, it's a good question. I am thinking when one person hurts another person, and the perpetrator comes to a point in his or her mind. I have hurt you. I'm going through the whole distress of feeling badly about what I did. I regret what I did. I confess to myself what I did. The main part of tshuva has to do with internal stuff. Yes, there is a necessary step to then go to the person and actually seek and ask verbally for forgiveness. But the bulk of the tshuva process is not that. That is on one level the maraschino cherry of the tshuva process. The main part of the tshuva process is for me to go through the torturous realization that I did something wrong, the extent of of what I did, and to feel your pain. So Yaakov on that evening, yes, he had to actually, in reality, meet Esav and see whether Esav was going to accept was going to forgive him. But the main bulk of Jacob's job was on that night, not between him and his brother, but between he himself and his own yitzarim, his own inclinations. He had to fight his own battle before he even went to Esav. I think that is an adequate response. Yes, he did have to finish that final act, but the bulk of our own tshuva is between me, myself, and I, not any other person, not even the victim.
I understand it much better now. Thank you.
Yeah, how hard it is to come to that realization?
Oh, for sure.
It's very difficult in totality, in purity.
It's also very humbling because you have to accept your own frailties and open yourself up.
That's what makes it that's what makes it so difficult for us human beings, because anything that is humbling is usually difficult for us arrogant human beings. Okay, we have 1 minute left, so we're not going to end off on this stressful evening of self coming to self-realization through very, very difficult self introspection. The last thing we'll end off with, I'm skipping one little step here, but I will end off with something on a high note. When Jacob actually leaves this life-changing evening, where his name is changed, and his name is changed into Yisrael, which means you are not to be called Jacob any longer, but you are to be called Yisrael, which means you are to be called a God wrestler. All of us as Jews it is incumbent upon all of us to perpetually be in a wrestling mode with ourselves, wrestling the perfection and the harmony and the tranquility and the peace, wrestling to get to that point of beautiful harmony where inner conflicts are put at ease, and we are somehow finding ourselves in a position of spiritual menucha, spiritual tranquility and rest. So on that evening, that is very difficult for Jacob, he actually ends off that evening by saying to himself, to that mysterious angel within himself, he says, he grabs onto the angel, metaphorically grabs onto the angel, and he says, I will not let you go until you bless me. I will not let you go until you bless me, which means that as difficult as it is to dig deep into self and to reach bottom and to come out with a new self-realization, as difficult as that is, and sometimes we get injured along the way, as Jacob did. He got a little clup in his foot, and he walks away a little injured, because when we dig deep, sometimes we do injure ourselves. But we should never walk away from such experiences until we see very, very clearly the blessing that all that distress, all that inner torture took. We have to be able to see the blessing that came out of it. And that we came out of it better, more courageous, more self-knowing than before. So I bless all of you to do the work, to do Jacob's work, to come out of it with a new realization, if not a completely new name, and a kind of feeling of I am now I am now reborn, and I can go ahead and I can move forward, and I will take and schlep the blessings with me. And friends, on that happy note, I will see you tomorrow, and I'm sure Kim has a few announcements for you.
Rabbi, can I say something?